Halo, oke. Halo teman-teman. Mungkin kita mulai aja sesi hari ini bersama Hugo. Sesi kali ini akan membahas tentang how to get works done while working from home. Sesi ini akan dibawakan oleh founder kami dari Ekipa, yaitu Hugo Messer. Sebelumnya yang belum tahu Ekipa itu apa, Ekipa ini kita agile consultant di Indonesia yang handle klien-klien yang berbasis industri financial, banking, insurance, dan industri-industri lainnya. So, sesi kali ini Hugo akan berbagi dengan teman-teman tentang gimana caranya kita bekerja dari rumah dan membereskan pekerjaan kita. Mungkin langsung aja, Hugo.
Ya, halo.
Yeah. So please start the session. I'll let you start the session.
Thank you, Jume. Here we go. Yeah, so I did another session last week, and this is my second session. So I didn't prepare incredibly long, but I think that I can share some valuable insights on how to work remotely, how to be productive when you're working from home. So I'm Hugo Meta. I'm an entrepreneur, and I am from Belanda or Holland. Been living in Indonesia or in Bali for the last 4 years. And today we cannot go outside because yesterday it was Nyepi, and there's a lot of ogos on Bali that are very dangerous. So everybody has to stay inside and switch the lights off in the evening. And then the governor decided to make it another day of stay at home because it's easy and people are used to it. And this is to avoid the coronavirus. So I hope that tomorrow I can go outside. And I think a lot of you guys are sensing that things are changing right now very rapidly. So many of you are working from home, maybe even for the first time. What I find myself is that if you follow the news a lot, you get worried. So I can imagine that a lot of you are also kind of, anxious or fearsome about the virus or whatever will happen. And for a lot of people, it's also new to start working from home. For me, the positive aspect is that right now I realize that it's actually quite effective to work from home because a lot of things like this you can do, and you can have calls and you finish one call and 2 minutes later you can start the next. Whereas if you're, for example, in Jakarta going from meeting to meeting, you spend a lot of time in a chat, and everything takes more time. So I actually am a firm believer of remote work and people working from home because you can stay with your family, you can be more productive, you can organize your time and your work however you see fit. But it's also challenging. So I wanted to share some of the things that I've tried in the last 15 years of my work life building companies to stay productive even if you're working from home. So this is my setup for the session today. I want to spend about 20 minutes to present because last week we had more questions than I could answer in the hour that we have. So I want to spend more time on the Q&A. The Q&A, you can just write your questions in the chat in Google Hangouts, and I'll try to answer them either in between if I can, or otherwise we'll do it after the 20-25 minutes. If you want to talk and ask questions, that's also fine. Just unmute. So if you're not talking, please be on mute. I think one person is still not on mute, maybe Jume. And if you have questions, just open up your speaker and just ask if you want to speak, or type it into the chat. So I think it's always good to have a little bit of interaction because otherwise I'm just staring at my camera and talking, and I always feel very weird doing that for longer than 20-25 minutes. So the things I want to discuss, first of all, is the mental barriers, then giving some ideas on how to change your mindsets to get ready to be productive when you're working on your own from home. some tools and systems that I've used and you might be able to use as well, and then we'll wrap up and do a Q&A. So what I think are some mental barriers to being productive when you're working for home are actually two. So the first one is what I always call followership. And I think the question that people or you need to ask yourself is, am I a leader or am I a follower? And what I've seen in my work here in Indonesia and also in, well, actually, it's valid for working with many people anywhere in the world, but I think in Indonesia and also in India, it's a very common way to have a lot of hierarchy. So that means we have leaders and we have followers. And if you are in a lower position, you consider yourself as a follower. And I think if you have that mindset, it's kind of challenging once you start working from home because the leaders are not around you and it's not that easy to get instructions on what to do, which actually means that you have to become a leader yourself. Because if you follow your leader, then this is the t-shirt you're wearing. You want to follow the instructions of somebody else, and that somebody else is usually in a power position, and he likes people to follow the instructions as he gives them. And I think this is the t-shirt we need to start wearing now. It's more about don't tell me what to do. So Equipa has t-shirts. When we do when you follow a training class of Equipa, we have these t-shirts with don't tell me what to do on the back, and I always encourage people to wear them in the office so that bosses start understanding that you're taking responsibility and you understand that you are the one who has to invent his own work and decide what to work on. And I think when you're working from home, more in isolation, it's important that you take, or maybe you wear this t-shirt and then look at it every day or hang it in front of you, because it's about making sure that you take the decisions, you make your own plan, and you work on the things that really matter. And you don't have a leader who's telling you what to do all the time. I think the second thing that's important is the paradox of planning versus execution. So what I've learned while I've been working with people here in Indonesia is this is my friend Priscilla, who wrote a blog article somewhere last year. She got a lot of comments, as you can see, 149. So it's she's Indonesian, so she's able to say anything she wants. But she says, look, we Indonesians are very strong at executing. We're good at following the instructions of a boss, where we're not necessarily thinkers and leaders. Yeah? So I think the distinction is, as I said in the previous thing, it's about execution versus thinking about what other people need to work on and thinking about direction, thinking about the vision for yourself and the vision for your team or your company. So what I mean here is that it's about finding the balance between defining a strategy, so defining why you do something and how you're going to achieve that, versus starting to execute. And what I've seen so far is that most people in Indonesia are very strong at this execution. So once it's clear what needs to be done, which could be by a discussion or which could be an instruction from a leader, you're very strong at execution. You start immediately, you get things done, and then when it's done, you stop. You don't go to the next thing. And I feel that especially in today's environment where people are working from home, it's also important to define a strategy or plan your work. So it might be a planning for a week, it might be planning for 2 weeks, or maybe even for a day, but it's about thinking about, okay, how am I going to be productive? How am I going to work on the things that really matter to me and to my boss and to my team before you start executing things? So you prioritize things, you think about importance of certain activities versus other activities before you blindly start executing. Because if you don't do that part, you skip the planning side or the strategy side, and you get directly to execution, there might be moments where you don't know what to do. I think everybody has found themselves sitting behind the PC and then wondering, okay, so what am I going to work on next? In that moment, you're actually on the execution side. And if you stay on that side, you will not come with an answer because you're just thinking, okay, what to do? And you wait for somebody else. Whereas if you start thinking about your goals and your priorities, and you go to the left side of this diagram, so you start planning things, it will be easier for yourself to know what to do in every moment of the day. So how do we change this? For me, it's mainly about rocks and monkeys. So for me, rocks are things that you push up a mountain, and a rock means a very big thing that needs doing, or it could be a smaller thing, but it's the most important thing that you need to do in a certain day or in a certain week. And it takes a lot of effort to push that thing up the mountain. Sometimes it doesn't take a lot of effort, but it's about defining the big rocks that you have to focus on. Because if you do the small rocks, which are the easy things, the small things like sending an email or making a phone call or sending a WhatsApp, you often get sucked into such activities, whereas those things not necessarily they don't necessarily bring you to the next big thing. They don't move you forward. So I'm always thinking for myself on a day-to-day basis, on a moment-to-moment basis, what is the big rock that I can move right now so that I achieve my longer-term goals. And the second thing is about monkeys. Uh, I always share about monkeys. Monkeys basically mean taking accountability. A monkey is your next step, or it might be a problem that you need to do or a certain activity. And you want to keep that monkey on your shoulder like this girl, and you don't want the monkey to jump to somebody else. So it means that if you know something needs to be done within your team or within your company or within your own life, that monkey sits, you know that thing, and it's the monkey, and you keep that monkey on your shoulder and you execute it. So you do that thing that the monkey tells you to do instead of just throwing it to somebody else, because monkeys tend to jump from shoulder to shoulder. And you want to make sure, especially when you're at home, that those monkeys don't jump around, because the problem with monkeys jumping around is that they keep jumping and they don't get done. So people don't, they don't, the moment you send the monkeys to somebody else, it doesn't get executed. Yeah, so and that's a problem, because you have probably seen many times that when the monkeys are going around everywhere and they are important, you over time you get frustrated and things get stuck. So it's important when you're working at home especially to realize that monkeys are there. Now, the more practical side, some tools and systems that have always helped me to be productive and to achieve certain things. For me, the number one is to make life goals. And this is a bit vague or spiritual, I think, but I do think that it starts from that level if you want to become an effective leader for yourself or your own life. So first one is to make life goals. And this guy is Tim Ferriss. I'm not sure if any of you has ever read the book, The 4 Hour Workweek, but I read it some 10 or 15 years ago, and it really blew my mind, because it's very American. But oh, somebody wants to ask something? No, okay. Somebody would unmute, I think. So it's an American guy, Tim Ferriss, and he wrote this book, I think in 2004 or five. What he's basically describing is how you can organize your life in order to work only 4 hours a week. Yeah? So not per day, but per week. Now, for most people, this seems unrealistic, but a lot of people who have followed him have actually achieved something along those lines. So what he's saying is that your goal is not to work only 4 hours a week and then sleep the rest of the week. But he's saying that by thinking that way, by thinking about only working 4 hours a week, you stimulate yourself to be productive, to be working on the most important things that matter to you. So one of the things that he describes in this book is what he calls dreamlining. And dreamlining is essentially, you list out, you see that on the left side of this diagram, you list out the things that you would like to have, the things that you would like to be, and then the things that you would like to do. So he says, for example, as an example, I don't know if he has this, but his first step is, I want to have an Aston Martin. And he wants to have a personal assistant and become a full kendo army, whatever that means. And he wants to be fluent in Greek, and he wants to be an excellent cook. So you list all those things, and then you describe what it's going to cost you in order to have those things, be those things, or do those things. So he says, okay, to own a Aston Martin, you don't necessarily need to be buying it. You might also lease it or rent it. Or in Indonesia, you might borrow money from a company like Adira, and then you can finance your Aston Martin. So he says you need to describe how much money is that going to cost you to own that Aston Martin, which is about $2,000 a month in his example. And if you want to be fluent in Greek, you want to have a 15 minutes conversation with a native Greek speaker. And you want to sell, if you want to be a best-selling author, you have to sell 20,000 books per week. Now you try to gather all those things and sum them up. So what he's saying is you need to describe how much money does all to achieving all your dreams cost you. So you have in this example, for example, I think he says $6,000 a month to finance his dreams or to finance his dream lines. And then you decide what steps are you going to take to achieve that. So for me, one important message in this whole reasoning is that he gives you the idea that to achieve your life dreams, you need to describe what you need as an income on a monthly basis. So by quantifying how much it will cost you to have everything in your life that you dream of, and quantify that on a monthly basis, you know exactly how much money you need to earn on a monthly basis to finance that. And he also says that that is your aim. And once you reach that, you should not try to reach for more, because if you say that, okay, I need $6,000 to finance all of my dreams, but once you reach the 6,000, you're starting to increase that number because of whatever you want, more, then you will eternally keep working. So once you have to, if you increase your dreams to 10,000 or 20,000, then eventually you need to keep working to make that happen. So this is where he says you need to make a sort of maximum number per month that you need, work hard to make that. And once you make that, you slow down a little bit, because that's how you reach 4 hours a week instead of working eternally to achieve the ever-growing list of things that you want. Now, once you have defined that, he says you need to make action steps. So you need to define what kind of things can you do right now in order to start your dreams. And so what he says is your dream lines are 6 months, or you might make it 12 months, but ideally 6 months or shorter. And then you define what are you going to do right now after you've written it down, what are you going to do tomorrow, and what are you going to do the day after. So you make a very short description or short-term planning for what you're going to execute and start moving it right away. So for me, this is sort of a tool to start from what are your aspirations in life, and writing down how can you start getting there. What actions do you need to take in order to achieve your dreams? So that's on a spiritual level. Now, the second thing that I've always used is to define your rocks, and a tool that helps a lot here is First Things First. The author it's an old book, and Stephen Covey wrote it. He's already passed away, but his legacy or his sons and kids are still writing a lot of books. But I think this is the best in the series they've written. And in this book, he describes the 4 quadrants, and that's what you see on the slide. So what he says is we have 4 angles essentially. First of all, on the left side, on the vertical axis, you've got things that are important and things that are not important. And then in the yellow horizontal side, you've got things that are urgent and things that are not urgent. Now, as you can see, there are some examples in here. So quadrant 1 are activities that are urgent and important, which might be your boss is calling you right now and he wants you to join, or you get an email from a client and you need to immediately respond to that, or crisis like we're having today. So that is a large part of your time consumption. People spend most of their time in quadrant 1, is what Stephen Covey is saying. And I think if you analyze your own activities along these 4 quadrants, you will find that you spend a lot of time in this quadrant 1. The other quadrant where people spend a lot of time is in quadrant 3. So those are urgent things that are not important. So some calls, your mother is calling you during the day. I would consider that to not be that important because you're working. For some people, that might be different, or your wife is calling you, for example. Some reports, so your boss is asking you to make some PowerPoint slide for your activities, which actually takes your time but doesn't help anyone to get further. So those are some examples of urgent activities, but they are not important. Yeah? So most people spend the majority of their time, 80 or 90%, in quadrant 1 and 3. So it's continuously doing things that come up, your emails, your calls, your WhatsApp messages, and you keep interrupting yourself. Then the second part is the not urgent stuff. So I will start with number 4, which is where you definitely don't want to spend your time. So this slide is already was somewhat older, but I think Facebook, LinkedIn, your Twitter, your Instagram, they are all in quadrant 4, unless you use Facebook to drive registrations for your online sessions or sell something, but otherwise it's just time waste. So these are activities that are not important and they are also not urgent. So they are basically wasting your time. And I think especially if you start working from home and you're not used to it, you might be spending a lot of time there because you get distracted, nobody's watching you. And I think it's important if you want to be productive, and I think you want to because otherwise you wouldn't be in the session. I think it's very important to make sure that you don't spend time on quadrant 4. And you can do that after office hours or maybe in the early morning, but during work you want to try and reduce all those distractions. Now, the most important quadrant is number 2, which are the not urgent and the important things. And this is where the strategy planning or the planning cycle that I just described earlier comes in. So it's about prevention. It's about thinking strategically beyond the coronavirus, for example. So what are the activities that I can do right now to make sure that me or my company or my team is prepared for the period after the crisis? Because every crisis passes away. You know that we have had recessions, we've got pandemics before. Maybe this one is a little bigger than before, both for the recession and both for the health implications. But you know that it is going to be removed. There is an end to this. And it might be 2 months, it might be 2 weeks, it might be a year, we don't know. But spending time in quadrant 2 means you start thinking about what can I do right now to make sure that I'm prepared when this is over? Or what can I do right now to make sure that I get through this recession or through this epidemic right now? Yeah, so it's about planning, it's about thinking, it's about visualizing, it's about recreating things that your team or your business is working on. And I think this is where most people should spend their time, but most people are not spending enough time in that. And I've always tried to make a pattern of thinking continuously at the beginning of the day or when I have had my lunch break and I restart, what are some of the quadrant 2 activities that I can do right now to make sure that I'm spending my time on the right things. And it's not to say that you should skip sending all emails and you should never work, you should never check your Facebook. Everybody does, but it's about making sure that you spend most of your time in quadrant 2. And what Stefan also says, and I think it has proven me at least to be true, that if you spend your time there, over time you get your life on track. You start pursuing your goals, you start pursuing the right things that will help you create your future. So the more time you spend there, on the longer run, this will create the life and the business that you would like to have. Number 3 is to make sure that once you have decided what are the big rocks that you're working on, so what are the quadrant 2 activities that you need to work on this year or this quarter or this month, you break them down into goals. And what I like to use for this in our teams and also for myself is OKRs. This is something I found this morning when I was preparing for this online session. It's an article and you see the link there. I think the slide deck will be shared with you and the URL is clickable from the slide deck. So what this guy is saying is similar to what I've just said. So you decide on your mission. So you break down your mission into objectives. From that, you define key results. You also start thinking about why do you want to achieve certain key results. So you consider the why. And then you find an accountability partner. And I put this slide here because I think that point is pretty important. When you're working from home alone, you can get in isolation, and it's very hard to you could get less accountable because nobody's checking on you, which is in your office, you normally have some sort of social control or social pressure. So it might help to have one peer, could be a friend, it could be a colleague, that you use it as an accountability partner. So you share your OKRs with each other, and then on a daily basis, you check in with each other for 5 or 10 minutes to help each other to stay on track on those OKRs or whatever goals you use. Yeah? You might check in every 2 to 4 weeks, but I would recommend to do it on a shorter time span, especially right now because things are moving fast. As an example from that same blog post, what OKRs are about. So OKR means objectives and key results. So the objectives are the things that you want to achieve. Yeah? These are the objectives you have, and the key results are essentially the steps to reach this objective. So in this case, you see that there's a B7 there. It's kind of blocking the word, but this is a personal OKR from James. he says, I want to improve my fitness. So that's his objective. He says, I don't know what the time span is, but he says Q4. So this is 1 quarter. In 1 quarter, he wants to improve his fitness. That's the objective. Now, the key results he has defined for himself to get there are enter 4 races, run 100,000. Apparently, the cumulative kilometers that he's running is 100,000, which seems a lot. Cycle 500,000 and go to the gym 25 times. So it's a very specific, measurable key result, and he can tick it off, and he knows what percentage he's accomplished. So you can see that he also has an action plan in this. So he made some specific actions to achieve those key results, and for himself, he wrote why. I never do that, but I think it can help. And then as you go into your period, which can be a quarter, you write down what percentage you have achieved. So this 40% of going to the gym might be that he has reached, 10 times, he has gone 10 times to the gym. So every time he goes extra, he'll update it and he gets a percentage. And then the progress that you see on top, the 38.2%, that's the average of his key results achievements. So this is a sheet that you could use. If you want, we can also share a template for this so that you can fill it, but it helps a lot to put this, for example, in a Google Sheet and then share it with your team or use it for your own goal setting. So OKRs is a very effective way to translate your longer term life goals into things that relate to a shorter term, a quarter or a year, and make it measurable. So the number 4 that I always believe in is to create a system. So I wanted to share a couple of tools that I use. The first is Evernote. Maybe some of you are using this already. And you can see that this is a screenshot from my Evernote of this morning, my personal one. You can see that I have a lot of notes on the left side, gathered in notebooks. But I always have one note on top, which is Q1. And you can see that inside there, I have focus. It's actually in Bahasa Belanda, but it says focus this week. So in the beginning of the week, I make a few key focus areas for myself. So these are 4 things, and then I describe my quadrant 2 and quadrant 1 activities. So in that list, it's a very simple way to track quadrant 1 and 2. So the quadrant 2 is, I don't change that so often, so it's more of a central guideline for myself what to focus on to keep doing the most important things. And in Q1, I always note down anything that comes up. So when I have a call or an action item from a call, then I immediately write down my Q1 activity here. This is another way to get organized Trello. So this is an old screenshot of our Equipa Trello backlog. You could even use this to structure your OKRs. So instead of putting it into a Google Sheet, you can use a Trello board where each column might be an objective, and you make a sticky note or a Trello card for each key result. This makes it easy for people to share things. And the benefit of Trello is that you can assign cards to people, or people can assign it to themselves. You can have a conversation inside it. You can add files to it. So this is a more interactive way of tracking your goals, and possibly also applicable for OKRs. And you can move things across your boards. I guess most of you know Trello, but I just wanted to show you how we apply this. This is another post that I found this morning. So I think one of the things that can help you to become productive is also to think about your time management. So what I used to do, I'm not doing that anymore, is what this guy describes in his 5 points. So you try to make a plan for yourself one day ahead. So the evening, for example, today evening, after you finish, before you close down your laptop and stop working, you ask yourself these 5 questions. So you start thinking about what's the most important thing I could work on tomorrow. What's the earliest I could get that one done, which is also an important habit. You start thinking what's the most important thing and then plan it for first thing in the morning. So instead of opening your laptop in the morning and then starting to check email and messages, you start working on your most important thing and you get that done. Once you get that done, you know that you've done the most important thing today. Yeah. So if your OKR, for example, is related to personal fitness, this might mean that when you wake up, the first thing you do is do 30 minutes running, or 30 minutes cycling. You've got that done. You feel satisfied about yourself, and then you know that you've already accomplished this. And after that, you start working on the least important things, or the lower important things. So what is saying is you could start planning your day ahead, and you describe what are the things you're going to work on, what is important, and then you try to make that into 30-minute blocks. So you make an agenda for yourself. If you work like me from let's say 8:30 until 3 o'clock, then you start making an agenda from 8:30 to 9:30. What I did this morning, for example, I started with making the slide deck for this presentation because I didn't have it, and I thought that's the most important thing. So from 8:30 till 9:30, I worked on making the slide deck, and I had already planned that yesterday. And then from 9:30 to 10 o'clock, I've got my first call. So I schedule everything in blocks of 30 minutes, and then I try to stick to that schedule. The benefit of doing that the day before is that you already start thinking about how am I going to plan my day effectively? How do I make sure that tomorrow I have an impact on my own activities or on the company that I work for? And it also gives you a tracker. So you make sure that those blocks of 30 minutes, you live up to them as much as possible and you stay focused. So you don't extend the 30 minutes, you don't make it into 3 hours, and you also don't, like when you finish the 30 minutes, you know what you're going to work on next. You don't have to think after the 30 minutes, okay, what am I going to do now? But you can immediately start executing it. I think that's a very important habit to stay productive as well. And I thought number 5 is to kill distraction, because as I said before, there are a lot of distractions right now, especially when you start working from home and people are in crisis. There are a lot of things that can take you away from working on the things that really matter. And another thing, and I'm not suggesting that you kill them, but I think this, for the people who have kids, have a lot of distraction as well. At least I have 3 kids around, and they tend to they walk around the house and ask for attention, like, daddy, daddy, can I do this? And can I do that? So I always try to protect myself by sitting in a separate space and making sure that they don't get in. And I look very angry when they disturb me so that they don't do it the next time. So that helps. So as a short wrap up, I think the most important thing is to make sure that you keep the monkey on your shoulder. So just realize that, especially in times like these, your company needs you. So you need to take that monkey, take the accountability, and make sure that you follow some of these steps and really start executing and contributing, instead of just thinking, oh, I've got a lot of time on my hands because I'm working from home. So clarify where you want to go in life or in the job that you have. Create clear priorities, break them down into goals using OKRs or any other system, a Trello board, and then try to build a system that works for you, like the time management that I've just discussed, using a Trello board, using Evernote, whatever tools you can use to just play with becoming more productive. So those are the points I wanted to share. Let's see if we have any questions.
Okay. I think we should open question. Anyone have a question? Can put on this chat or live question.
I see one question about the Scrum Master certification. Maybe you can answer that one, you may?
Oh, okay. Basically, it is a similar, similar difficulty, similar question. But the difference is we have two language first, Bahasa Indonesia and English. This is a ISM, the IKIPA certification. And secondly, we already acknowledged by the local company in Indonesia, local corporates, and others. I think it's quite similar. And for the price, we are a little bit cheaper because it's a local certification. I think that's it.
Hugo.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Hi, Karan this side.
So, which one are you?
Hi, Karan.
Hi. Uh, okay, so one challenge which I see in my context is people. I mean, in this time, we see how the effective ways of conducting ceremonies or Scrum ceremonies, right? And we see that most of the people are maybe they don't have a face-to-face one, or sometimes not prefer, right? So, how do you? What are your suggestions or any practices how you guide us to do some these practices very effectively in our organization?
So what you're saying is that some people don't want to come to video calls to do the Scrum ceremonies as you have scheduled them. Am I right?
Yes, yes.
Well, so I think this relates to Scrum, but I think that the Scrum Master has a very important role in that to make sure that people actually join that, because I think everybody knows that if we don't do regular calls and alignment sessions, it's going to create a lot of misalignment within the team, and people need to realize that if you normally do that in the office, you should maybe even do more of them when you are working remotely, because there is a very high chance of misalignment. So I think the Scrum Master has a key role in making people aware about the importance of having alignment sessions. And whether you follow Scrum or whatever, it doesn't matter. I think even in a non-Scrum or non-IT team, it's important to have those alignment calls. And I'm always a big fan of creating a certain rhythm, which might be, for example, weekly or a 2 weekly rhythm, where you have your planning session on Monday, and then every day you do a short alignment session. If it's Scrum, you do the daily Scrum for maximum 50 minutes. If you do anything else, or you're working in an HR department, whatever, you just try to schedule 5 or 10 minutes every day at the same time in a video call, and then you do that every day. And at the end of the week, you look at what did we achieve, and retrospect also on how the team can become more effective in the week after. And I think people should realize, especially that last one, if you work remotely, it's important to at least have some retrospective on how did we function as a team, given that everybody works from home. What are some things that we might improve next week in terms of doing more sessions or doing more alignment or using other tools? You know, there are people who believe that you can stay aligned with chat, and I think given all the WhatsApps and Telegram messages that we have nowadays, it is easier, but it's also easier to miscommunicate using text. And it's also easy to get very isolated and get a disconnect within your team if you never speak face to face, or at least using voice. I'm a big fan of using video calls. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, because we are doing everything what you mentioned. The only thing what I see is that I tried it once, like when we were on call. Maybe it depends upon culture also. Some people are very open to be on the call or face to face, and
Yes.
sometimes we need to ask and do an experiment. I think that's one important part of being a scrum master to the teams. Thanks, Hugo. Thanks for the answer.
Sure.
Uh, yeah, I think we have one question in chat. Could you
Ah,
please
the
elaborate
monkey.
more on monkey things?
Sure, I can always elaborate on monkeys. Okay, wait. I will show you the manager meets meets the monkey. So this is where I get the monkey from. The 1 minute manager meets the monkey. This is an old book from Ken Blanchard, and what he describes is the concept that monkeys tend to jump from one shoulder to the next. So an example is, I'm working as a team member, and we have a scrum master in our team. Now, as a team member, I tend to have certain questions. So I have a question for the client, for example. Let's say we're a distributed team and our client is somewhere else in another location. And as a team member, I need to get access to a server, for example. Now, I might, as a team member, think that this monkey belongs to our scrum master. So I ask my scrum master to ask the client to give me access to that server. Now, the moment the scrum master says yes to my request, the monkey's jumping from my shoulder to the scrum master's shoulder. And what will happen at the moment is that the scrum master basically needs to get that access to the server for me. If he forgets that, then a few hours later, I might go to the scrum master and ask, look, did you get that access to the server from the client? And he might say, no, I was very busy, so I couldn't do it, but hold on, I will go to the client right now and I try to get you the access to the server. What has happened in that case is that because I didn't take responsibility for going directly to the client and asking the person myself, I basically the monkey jumped from my shoulder to the scrum master's shoulder, and I started reversing roles with him, because actually my role is to make sure that I can do my work, which means I need access to that server. And suddenly my scrum master took the responsibility, so our roles reversed, and I started asking him to get that for me. So when I talk about monkeys, it's mainly about realizing that in this example, the access to the FTP server, to the server, I could do that myself. So there's a lot of there's many cases where we could actually do something ourselves, which leads to us getting things done faster as a team, versus making sure that this monkey jumps to somebody else's shoulder, which may take longer, and he's going to actually have to do this for me, and I have to remind him about it. So the book is actually very short, and I think it's some of the best books that I've ever read about management. So the person who actually asked about the monkey, maybe you should read that book, and you will get more details about it. But I always like monkeys because people like monkeys in general, and it's a good symbol to make people understand that responsibility is with yourself, not someone else.
Hugo, one question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Uh, we do trainings and an organization, right? So, like, let's say Scrum Master training within in-house. So, any tools you recommend? Like, we use Hangouts as of now. Uh, any tools which is very effective for training online?
Jume, maybe you can take that one because you're better at this than me.
Okay.
Yeah, this time we try to explore a couple of things, but so far the yeah Hangout is a good start. I mean, everyone can have access to Google Hangout, or we can try Zoom and try to combine with a couple of tools like I think Slido for question and answer, because a couple session before we use Slido for Q&A. And other thing, I think we can use Zoom. Yeah, I think online Hangout, Zoom, or Add plus Slido is enough for starting.
Sure. Thank you.
Hi, Hugo. I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
My name is Andrew. We met before. I'm from Tripatra.
Ah, hi,
So,
Andrew.
hey, I'm just curious about that question regarding the monkey. In a waterfall organization, kind of like our organization right now, is trying to implement these agile concepts, where we have a structure. We have an organization structure where it moves along the way, and then there is some specific hierarchy on that.
Yes.
Whereas the procedure and the process is also tailored to the specific hierarchy. Sometimes when we are, let's say the monkey concept, where you say that the monkey jump to the guy who needs to give you the access to the server. Well, we want to we want to finish the job, so we want to take the, let's say, the ownership of the job. But in one way, we kind of doing his job, right? And then we will set a different understanding also in the team, and it will set a different agenda in the future. Whereas
Yes.
this guy will always say that, all right, I can do the same thing, and then finally he will take it and do the job.
Yes.
So in whatever organization, it will set a different outcome in the long terms. So how do we deal with that? Thanks, man.
So wait, what you're meaning is that if as a manager you say yes to something, then the person will keep coming back to you to get things done. Is that what you mean?
No, my point is that once the, like your example, once that the guy is now the one who holds the monkey that needs to give you access to the servers, right?
Yes. Yes.
So we want to take the ownership of the job either. So let's say we want to push it every day, and then suddenly it's not happening. Then we decided we want to take it, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of feel that if we take it and then let's say we succeed, then it will set a different uh, mindset in the future, that this guy will keep the same thing, and then with the hope that you will come and take care
Yeah.
of the business, and then
Which,
it become a big negative effect to everyone, right?
yeah, yeah. Well, for I believe that as leaders, you need to start reinventing the culture, the mindset that people have around taking responsibility, because most companies, whether it's waterfall or, I mean, when I'm thinking about decision making like this, it's about the pyramid. So you have your hierarchy and people try to push most of the responsibilities up the chain because they're afraid of making a wrong decision. For example, this guy might be afraid to talk to the client because he thinks he's not allowed to talk to a client because of his position in the hierarchy. And I think as an organization, it's important to keep discussing these things. So if there is any tension like you just described, what I would do as a leader is, or as a team leader or as a member, is to use something like a retrospective or an open conversation to make this discussable. So we could take that situation of the server as an example, then discuss with the team how did we deal with this and how can we make it more easy in the future so that people, the monkey stays with the people where it really belongs. And I think this way, if you keep having that open conversation with people, then eventually you stimulate people to keep that responsibility with them. So just one client we're working for right now is a medical company here in Indonesia. They're a global company, one of the main medicine manufacturers or medical manufacturers. And what they have decided is to become agile. They have actually tried to slash most of the management layers. They have completely abandoned their KPI system. They have also gone to a structure which is not like a traditional pyramid, but it looks like a circle. So we have squads and chapters in that circle. So it's not a chain of command, but it's round. And in the middle, you've got a group of people who are driving key things, but most of the execution is in the outer layer. And I think that company is really a role model for how organizations can change this sort of hierarchical way of organizing things to something which is completely agile. So it's about having leaders who are brave enough to abandon their status and their traditional hierarchy and empowering teams to make decisions. So for example, next week we're going to facilitate a session there online, by the way, to decide with the teams how the team is going to make decisions. So they have basically said, okay, we don't want decisions to be made top down. And as an organization, as a team, we're going to define what are the decisions that can be made by us versus what decisions need to be made by the global office or maybe still the leadership within the Jakarta office. So they make employees lower level part of that discussion, part of reshaping their complete decision-making framework and also the goal-setting framework. So it's the same thing. They abandoned the traditional top-down goal setting. They encourage people next week to start coming up with their own OKRs, bottoms up, where the leaders do give some direction of where we want to go, but the OKRs are decided by the different squads and the different chapters. So it's a long answer to your questions, but I think in order to change that waterfall or hierarchical mindset, we need to change a lot of aspects. And then no matter what we do or where we start, we need to make sure that we continuously have an open conversation with our employees about keeping monkeys where they belong. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Okay. Any other question? Anyone want to ask directly?
I saw Jonathan asked something, but he already left, I believe. OKRs. There's nothing. Okay. Well, maybe somebody wants to discuss something completely different about working from home or anything else, whatever. We still have 10 minutes.
Yeah, I think I have something. I mean, we know that we've been facing a lot of things like sometimes, I mean, we were just trying to list down what are the things people face in this kind of time. Maybe noise. Sometimes people have a lot of, as you see, right, kids around, that maybe noise around, right? And I mean, we're just trying to list out how we can be more productive during this time. I mean, any ideas on this?
Well, I think the things that I shared in my slide deck is exactly what I would recommend. If it's about noise or are you based in India or are you based in Indonesia?
Yeah, I'm in Malaysia, Hugo. I'm in Penang.
Malaysia.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, but everybody is arrested at home right now, isn't it? So you have no noise,
We're working from home. We're trying to do the best, as I tell, right? The best practice is what we can do.
right?
But
Um,
it was very informative, the session. Thanks.
I think, I mean, disturbance-wise, I really, well, it depends. I have the luxury of having a home with like 4 or 5 different rooms, so it's pretty easy for me to stay in a room where nobody else is in the background. But I think it's also about making some agreement with the children or a husband or a wife to make sure that you don't get distracted. I mean, if you leave that open, then you might not be productive at all because you get disturbed all the time. But I sometimes get into fights with my wife because I look angry at her, and my kids take it better than my wife. But I think this kind of understanding you need to get eventually of, when is it okay to disturb me and when is it not. You can make some agreements or rules about this. I guess that in the beginning you might get into some nasty discussions, but over time you probably can find the right way.
Yeah. Even I think the working agreements with the team, it helps.
Yeah, so you could make a team agreement with your family or something. Or you do it with a team and with your family so that you have
Right.
clear agreement in your house.
That's tough.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other question? Ada yang ingin bertanya? Please, if anyone want to ask, yeah, question in the chat.
Yeah. I'm a kindergarten teacher. It's quite difficult for me to teach online because I need to observe these directly. Right. Well, I think my kids also start working from well, kindergarten might be harder because it's smaller kids, but my kids are 12 years old, and the teacher is actually using Hangouts. So they open Hangouts in the morning and they give some instructions about the work they need to do, which is either on their laptop or in a book that they have taken home before the school closed. And I think the teacher stays online, so he keeps the Hangout open all the time so that he can actually see the kids. And so there's my kids are sitting behind their PC. The teacher can see them, and then they're doing their book work or on the uh, PC. But I figured that if you have kindergarten, they are just jumping around, which makes it a little harder. I'm a, yeah, exactly. The other kid I have is 7 years old, so he wouldn't be able to sit for a very long time. But I guess you can. Well, I think it depends on the age group, but I think there's a lot of tools that you can use online where kids. I see that my kids use some of the access the gamified learning. So you have like for typing instructions or learning simple words. There's games so they can collect points, and when they collect points they can play a short game and then they continue, and that keeps them engaged for a pretty long time. So yeah, toddlers is hard. I don't know, probably put the mother next to her.
Okay. Any other question? Please, we still have 7 minutes. I think. Live
Halo,
question. Okay, please.
bisa dalam Indonesia enggak apa ya?
Ya, coba.
Okay.
Gini, kan kita kan biasa kerja di kantor tuh kan ketemu tim, terus ketemu customer ya. Nah, sekarang kerja dari rumah. Gimana caranya membangun kepercayaan dengan tim dan dengan customer kita dari jarak jauh agar apa yang kita rencanakan kerja kita tuh dengan tim dengan customer tuh saling percaya dan mereka juga tidak ada kebohongan untuk memberikan report ke kita. Jadi ada timbal balik antara kita ke tim dan ke customer, saling membangun kepercayaan. Seperti itu aja. Terima kasih.
So you got the point, Hugo? No?
Yeah, you can probably clarify a bit. I
Okay.
understood part.
He asked about how to build a trust between the team and even the customer or client through work from home or because
Yeah, so
usually they works directly face to face and meeting, but right now they should work from home. How to build the trust between the team and also the customer or clients?
Yeah, so I think building trust is not that easily done in a remote setting because people, I think, especially in Indonesia, people are still used to building trust by meeting each other and building relationships. But I think, I've been working with distributed teams for almost 15 years now, and I've had a lot of clients, for example, in Holland or Sweden that worked with our teams in India. And then sometimes clients don't travel initially, so they select team members through interviews, through video calls, and then the team starts working for them. And I think the key is to make sure that you have enough meetings with video, face to face, which balance between goal setting and alignment, and also doing, let's say, chit chat or just social calls. So I think it's about scheduling the right types of video calls to substitute for drinking coffee or meeting together. So I think you can, for example, make cadence where on a weekly basis on Monday you do a formal goal setting session for 30 minutes for the week with the whole team, and maybe even clients can join. You put all those goals in a Trello board, maybe in a Google Sheet, as I showed the OKRs. On a daily basis, you do a short synchronization session to stay aligned. And then by the end of the week, you look at the results that the team has accomplished, and you do a retrospective on how did the team function. And I think in between, what we are doing in Equipa, for example, is every Tuesday and Thursday we have an online just chit chat, a coffee chat. So it's a half an hour, a 45-minute meeting where we do video calls, and we just don't talk about business. We talk about anything that comes up, or our worries about working from home or anything else. So I think if you get the right cadence of doing that, you can, even online, you can build a certain level of trust, because trust comes from building relations, but it also comes from getting things done. So if your structure of goal setting and achievement is producing results, then you'll build more trust. Mengerti Pak atau mau bahasa Indonesia juga?
Uh, Gimana Pak?
Ya, udah paham, Pak.
Udah the point.
Udah.
Okay.
Okay.
I think we have last 3 minutes. I think I should share a couple of things. Hugo.
Ya, ayo.
Yeah, from Equipa, we have a product named Indonesia Scrum Master. You can check it on ism.equipa.co.id. It is a Scrum Master certification by Equipa. And we also have a free session next week regarding the Scrum Master certification by our own coach Ugeng Wijaya. The session will be on Tuesday and Wednesday next week. You can RSVP on s.id/ism pub. Is it limited seats? I think we have a 2 days session with Ugeng. And then if you want to take certification, we recommended you to use Hugo 50 to get a discount. The first you can book on s.id/ism booking. And the last one, we also have a new program, the online training or double certification program. You can be a Scrum Master, first product owner in 2 weeks, and teach from our own Agile coach, our Equipas Agile coach. There is Rez, Hugo, Angga, Taju, Obed, and Ugeng. You can check it on s.id/Equipa. I think that's it from me, and thank you for the there is a one question. I think the last question. Thank you for the participation. I think Hugo, can you ask? Oh yeah, no, a question, a statement. I
Yes.
think that's it, and thank you for your participation.
Thanks for
And
joining and good questions.
another, I forgot to mention, we have another session tomorrow with rest. You can check it on s.id/agile rest to join another session.
Thank you. See you next session.
Thank you, and see you for the next session.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Hugo. Thanks.